It is Wednesday, July 23rd, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Peaceful Heart Network and the amazing work going forward after our support. This is Wednesdays with Gene. I am the eponymous Gene Monterastelli. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today what we're going to do is we're actually going to talk to Gunilla and Ulf from the Peaceful Heart Network, dual celebrating for the 24 hours of tapping, and talk about going forward. I know lots of people made some amazing contributions, and I just want to hear from them, their plans, and that sort of stuff. But like always, before we jump in, I just want everybody to take a pause, put yourself in your body, and what we're going to do is we're just going to do a minute and a half of wordless tapping. And so all you need to do is just let your fingers do the walking, move from point to point, take a nice easy deep breath. And just feel yourself in your body. And when I'm doing something like this and I scan, I have a tendency to only scan down to my hips. So scan your whole system and notice what's going on as we do this. Nice big stretch. Check it out. And if anything came bubbling up, tail ender, something you need to do when we're done with this, maybe just a little insight that showed up, I'm always tapping with a pen and paper nearby. Grab anything that came up. It's really important that when we're tapping that we get the relief in the moment, but it's a great chance for us to build on that and add other stuff to it. So before we have a quick conversation with Ulf and Gunilla, I just want to share a few things on the calendar. Next week, what we're going to do, we're going to be back here again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you 5 things that I learned from the 24 hours of tapping. I obviously was there for all 28 of the presentations, and I wasn't just facilitating, I learned a lot from it. And so we're going to come back, we're going to talk about some reflection and maybe some things that you can integrate into your daily practice. A week from Sunday on August 3rd, we're going to do another version of Tapping for Pets. Again, we're going to do this as a fundraiser for the Peaceful Heart Network so we can continue this. We did this training back in the spring, and we were able to raise another $1,000. So if you have some fuzzy creatures in your life, I'd really encourage you to join me next Sunday for that 2-hour training. I'm going to share with you exactly how I use tapping to take care of the fuzzy and scaly and gilled creatures in my life. It's going to be a really, really good time. So if you like the playlist for all of our Wednesday replays, wednesdayswithgene.com. And then if you go to tappingforpets.com, you can get all the information and sign up to join us next weekend. It's going to be a really, really good time. So without further ado, what I want to do is I would like to bring my friends from the Peaceful Heart Network onto the screen. Hold on just a second here. I need to get Gunilla into... There we go. Hello, my friends. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderfully.
I mean, what else could be after this fantastic weekend with 24-hour tapping? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun when we get a
You're a champ, Gene. You're a champ, and so is everybody who is supporting it, and all the 28 experts and the people contributing with time and the people investing in this so that it can spread. I think it's fantastic.
That's awesome. So one of the things that I wanted to do was, because when we were, when we had the conversation during the event, what we did is we were talking about what is been happening in some of the work that's been going on. What I'd love to hear is moving forward, what are things that you are hoping to do, or what are your plans, or just kind of what's going on forward as we do this work continuously?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it is so amazing to have this support from, like you said, for everybody who watches this and people who come to our trainings, because it's like we have one now after 1 hour actually, one time every last Wednesday of the month, or more or less, sometimes another date, but it will always be on our website. And when looking forward on looking ahead, what we're going to do, we had this one of those who you interviewed was Aga Kehinde
Hmm.
from UK, and together with her, it's initiative from Aga actually, to not actually, but it's an initiative from Aga to work with a school in a kind of challenged area in UK. And but she also included some parts of this for exchange with other places. So we're going to do one in Sweden, a school, and one in Rwanda. So we were thinking of this because we have been saying so long time that what would be fantastic is, of course, if children learn how to self-regulate already
Hmm.
from a young age. So this we want to make it a bit like a challenge to ask also you who are listening and watching to look for a school in your community that could be interested in joining to learn these first aid for stress and trauma. That is something that we feel like, wow, for the upcoming generation to really know. There are other similar initiatives, but this is like, yeah, let's see what we can do.
And one of the things that I find really interesting about working with kids is they are so much more receptive to something like this. You know, adults have skepticism in history and they want to know, and they want to know why and how and what's going on. And I've found that when we approach young people and we're just like, hey, would you like to feel better? This is kind of weird. They just want to feel better, and they're going to engage with that in that particular way. And so it's exciting to hear that that's something that you want to do more of as you're moving forward.
Yeah, and they can also be, certified. We had a friend, teacher in Sweden who did this with kids in a school. They were
Hmm.
like 7 years old, so in Sweden that would be second grade. And they learned tapping. They got a certificate from us. And then she said, "Oh, let's fundraise, like what you do." But they fundraised for another project um, by going home to their parents and showing them the parents, the stressed parents, how to deal with stress and trauma. And I love that, it is. So, and then they got paid from the parents, and the money got put to a for a fundraising project. So, there are all these different ways of doing this enjoyable, like you say, for kids, and they loved it.
And I think one of the things that you're highlighting in that, I think that is really important, is to recognize the fact that, like, I am not responsible to share tools with everybody, but every single person I have the opportunity to share a tool with, not only am I helping them, but I'm putting them into a position where they then get to be advocates, and they then get to be people who are sharing in other ways as we move forward.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what parenting is, isn't it? I mean, parenting is about helping kids understand their emotions and handle them. That's parenting 101. And if you give the kids a real tool to do that, the whole next generation can actually walk through life less reactive.
And so then,
Hmm.
as we engage with this, just from your experience, I think one of the things that I hear a lot from people is, how do I share, just start, how do I have a conversation with another human about these tools? I know that when I started as a tapper in the first 18 months, I probably talked more people out of tapping than I was able to invite them into it, just because of my approach and how I showed up. And so, just like, because you're making lots and lots of inroads and invitations, like, structurally, but even after you get invited into an institution or a community, it always comes down to an individual invitation. So, like, what are pieces of advice or guidance that you could give to people in the world who just want to share this more in their community, as a, because one of the things I spend a lot of time talking about is, like, there are formal and informal helpers. And the difference between a formal and an informal helper is just the setting and the title. It's much less about the actual act of helping. It's about the context. And so, what are thoughts or things that folks could do when they want to share this in the world that will make it easier for them as they're kind of engaging in that.
I
One
mean, the
one
first
thing that
thing
we've discovered that
that
made
we
it
often
so
talk
much
about is
easier.
what.
Ulf, why don't you go first, and then Gunilla, I'll have
No,
you go after
I
that.
mean it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've found helped a lot, um, was, and this may sound really weird, tapping is a somatic therapy. It uses the body to regulate the nervous system of the body. So by having one more somatic therapy, we could create a simple double bind in the spirit of Milton Erickson, the famous hypnotist. Instead of saying, I would like to show you tapping. Tapping can calm you down. Would you like to try tapping? We now say, look, we have two approaches to downregulating arousal in the nervous system. One is called tapping, one is called havening. Why don't you try them and see which one works best for you? And this has made more people accept tapping and havening and somatic therapies than if we had come with either of them alone, because we're not trying to convince them about anything. We're just allowing them to judge what the difference is. So we're not selling, we're not convincing. It's not a brand, it's not a product. It's just curiosity. What will this do for me?
And I think that's really, really key is, giving someone a lived experience before they are in a circumstance where we're trying to explain what is going on. Because it's so much easier to go, if you have the experience, the question you're going to ask is, how did that work? Before you have the experience, the question is, does this work? And I love the way that you're presenting it, where you're giving them a choice, and parents do this all the time. Would you like to clean your room or fold your clothes? Inside of that is implied that they're going to do one of those things. And by going, hey, would you like to feel better? We could try A or we could try B. Then they're engaging with it because we're offering it with consent. Would you like to try this thing? But we're making it really easy for them because all they're doing is they're making a choice. Gunilla, what were you going to
Exactly.
say before you guys started talking at the exact same
Yeah,
time?
yeah. I think it is because there is some time lapse. That's why I don't
Yep.
hear when somebody starts talking. Sorry. Yeah. The other thing that we always recommend it is to find somebody, what we call an ally, somebody in the place you want to reach out to,
Right.
who is already, like what you were mentioning, informal helpers. Or I mean, it can also be the formal one, but often it is somebody who people come to, who listens, who know the things about people, and therefore is available for listening also to something that you are bringing. So in that sense, I mean, we have always, wherever we have been, we have always been invited by somebody. We don't just come somewhere, but first you have somebody who trusts you, and then that person is trusted by the community. So it comes, yeah, here's somebody who comes with something, but it is presented by somebody we already know, who we know want us well, who wish us well. So in that sense, finding an ally, like in a school, a teacher who is already helping the kids, or listening, or open-minded, or something like that.
And I think one of the things that you're saying there, Gunilla, is really key is that, sometimes the entry point that we're making might not be the ultimately most powerful entry point or ultimately the decision maker in that particular process, but it's someone who can get us in the door. I think about this a lot when I'm tapping on my own is I'm not necessarily like looking for a root cause. I'm looking for a place to start. And oftentimes as I tap on the first thing, I go a little deeper, and I tap on the next thing, I go a little deeper, and I tap on the next thing, I go a little deeper. Like approaching a school, it would be awesome if I get the principal or the counselor on board, but my connection point might be another parent who's part of the parent organization, or the teacher of my child who I have a good relationship with, and giving ourselves permission that, the other thing that I think about a lot when I'm sharing any of these tools is I am convinced that every human that is walking the earth, if they are presented with tapping or any of these tools enough times, they will ultimately say yes. Now, some people that might be 100 billion invitations and we're not going to get there. But every single time I mention it to someone else and I say, hey, I have this thing, would you like to try it? Even if they say no, the next time someone brings it up, they already have a data point of going, "Oh, I've heard about that thing." And so one of the things that's helped me is that when I'm offering any tool is I don't feel bad when someone says no to me, because I know what I've done is I've planted a seed, I've dropped a little water, I've added a little fertilizer that hopefully the next person who comes across that field, when they make an invitation, to beat this metaphor to death, it's going to create an opportunity for a deeper harvest as we are engaging with all of that, because they will now be ready to engage with it in that particular way.
I'm into this tapping at all because somebody mentioned at that time TFT, thought field therapy. I thought,
Mhm.
oh, that sounds weird. And then the second time I heard it, I said, okay, this was the second time, so let me go and see what it is.
The first time I heard about tapping, the person did such a bad job explaining it that I just left confused. But it was enough for a seed to be planted so that it gave an opportunity. Like, even being introduced into it in a sense of confusion started to take up some capacity in my lived experience, which allows me to engage with it that way in a little deeper way. The other thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is we got together at the end of January, beginning of February, and you brought a bunch of stakeholders from around the world. And could you talk a little bit about what the goal of that particular gathering was? Hearing all of those people who are talking about it, and what are the possible fruits that you're hoping to produce from that? Because I know you guys are working on some stuff behind the scenes around that.
Yeah, I mean, the main intent was to, for the first time in 15 years, stop and look at all the different projects we have supported in
Hmm.
over 45 countries and see if we could find common denominators for best practices. So we're looking to create papers around what is the best practice to allow other people to be inspired, copy, and develop it further. Now, the interesting thing we found is that we're involved both with taking care of teenage mothers or children's born in prison or people going into the justice system or people coming out of the justice system and reintegrating into society or people fleeing from injustice. So we have the full circle of most of the places where the village that is supposed to support a child into adulthood and prosperity in some way or circumstances have failed. And we can see clearly that the component we bring, we call our toolbox FAST, first stage stress and trauma, where tapping is our primary and first tool, which was then joined by havening, allowing the double bind and breathing. And we have 60 more somatic interventions. But most of all, it is our frame of mind. What we don't do to be both trauma informed and trauma competent, and what we do to make sure that anybody can learn this and do it safely, even with super vulnerable populations. And by doing that, we could see that part of the secret sauce of that village when it functions is the ability for everyone to be able to self regulate and regulate others. So the documents are in the writing. It's going to be at least 3 to 5 documents. They will be available. It's all going to be for free as usual. So your donations, whoever you are donating, is what makes this possible. Because when we say free, it means freely available to anyone who needs it. And at the same time, we got to buy the paper and the coffee and all the other stuff.
And it was really interesting, that conversation. We were on the last day, and Sheriff Carl walked over to me. So, for those of you who saw the conversation we had with the men in the HEART program in Chesterfield, Virginia, Sheriff Carl is the one who's head of that facility and works with Carrie. And he pulled me aside and he said, "I want to make sure this gets noted." And he goes, "We have people from all over the world in different contexts and different languages, and we're serving different populations. And we've had this basic tool set and we've all been learning on our own. And we got together to talk about best practices. And for the last 3 days, everybody's been saying the exact same thing, that the best practices we have discovered are showing up over and over and over again." And it's what you're talking about there, Wolf. It was a simple invitation to give someone a tool in the moment to do some self-regulation, and then everything got an opportunity to build on top of that because people were in a different resource state. And it was super fun to see someone who has been living in one really specific context and working so hard to serve his men and women, to have him have this global view of what was going on in transformation and being able to see, oh my gosh, as I hear Derek talk about what is going on in Uganda and Placido's talking about what's going on in Rwanda and the stuff that's going on in Poland, Europe, and all of that sort of stuff, to go, oh my gosh, like we're learning, like there's this Gene's favorite made up stat: 37% of my job is normalizing the human experience. Because even when we're in these different contexts, there's so much stuff that is unique but then there's all of these things that are similar. And so I think it's super, super wonderful that we're getting a chance to document that, which will make it easier for people to repeat the work wherever they are in the world. So going forward, like magic wand, dream, and I don't mean like everybody in the world's healed. Like that's the ultimate goal. But over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, if you could create a frictionless path to create change, what would you hope you guys are able to do with the organization going forward over the next couple of years?
Yeah, upscale. I mean, we need people who care for this to spread to wish to be a part of helping it spread, because we can only reach a certain number of people on our own. And for that to happen, we need to make the tools available. We're creating an online academy, a school online where people can learn our basics at their own time, and we're supporting many languages. And if people just spread this, so that, I mean, my dream has always been that this would be a part of standard first aid curriculum. People are taught the Heimlich maneuver and, heart resuscitation and, mouth to mouth. Well, they should know also the basic somatic regulation of nervous system. So that would be incredible. And also, if people who are already working very well with tools that are great, like CBT and ACT and TRE and all these other different psychological interventions, if they would just add this little layer of reaching the nervous system, that would be amazing. And it might lower some medications, it might lower some hospitalizations, and it might prevent a lot of suicide, because we know for sure that suicide is one of the things that can be prevented if you can notice that you can do something about your situation and your anxiety can go down.
As you saying that, I was just thinking back to the conversation we had with Carrie Rhodes, and she said that all of the deputies now get this training as just part of their regular deputy training in Chesterfield. Like just this idea that it is now just woven into the fabric of how they integrate what they are doing with all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Ganella.
read, write, math, music, and emotional regulation. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what a kid needs.
yeah, absolutely. Ganella, what about you? What would you like to see going forward?
No, I mean, it is this to make it available to as many people as possible. And then to just add on to that, because I've been into several of those international first aid for for trauma. And often it is described, that's how it came, this from trauma informed to trauma competent. It is
Hmm.
often you will be informed what is trauma, what are the symptoms, but not a tool really, except for, of course, listening. But for some, just telling your story will not be helpful. It will be the other way around. So in this way, I mean, of course, the Red Cross, we have our colleague Armando, he uses this within the Doctors Without Borders with very good results. So, I mean, going from both those crises, because it is like in challenged areas where this work started, where people don't get almost any help. So, and through those international organizations, of course, it can reach, I mean, humanitarian organizations, it can reach those places. But also this coming back to teaching it in schools. But we also want to bring this into, I mean, to see that, what can I say, the joy of healing. I mean, to make, so we were talking also about doing more like, what can you say, um, an event. I mean, also live event like in Sweden, and that could be replicated in other places. To go also to communities to show these tools with music, because we love doing this with music and movements, and that can of course be online also. But doing this with people, of course, is really wow. That's true healing, and we have seen it, of course, and you have seen it when we were in Rwanda. So it's on both sides, both the online, but also, of course, in person, live to find. It's like when you go to do this in magics in places. I mean, you know, the joy it brings. And
Yeah.
this can also be integrated in bringing joy, because that's what people really need. It is to feel like, wow, you know, what do you do with this feeling of, oh, you know, this sigh of relief that can come after these sessions.
And I guess, the thing that excites me just as we think about these tools, yeah, when I moved to New York 12 years ago, and I would meet someone for the first time, I would be on a first date or something like that, and they're like, "So, what do you do for a living?" And I would try to explain this thing. A decade on, now when I have that conversation, it's, "Oh, I've heard about that," or "That has been introduced for me." And so, like, for everybody who is listening to this, and we're talking about systemic change and creating events and stuff like that, to recognize the fact that every single place that we plant a seed, every single time that we share. And again, like one of my favorite parts of when I got a chance to travel with you when we were in East Africa is everywhere we went, they wanted to share testimonies, and they used that word specifically. And a testimony is not a prosecution. A testimony is just saying, "This is my lived experience. And this is what I was suffering with, and this is how I use the tool, and this is how my life is different." I mean, I can remember when we were leaving Pastor John, how sad they were because they didn't get to tell us all of the stories of all of the change that had happened. Like, they were literally sad. They were disappointed and were hounding us as we were getting in the van because we had this 12-hour ride home to get to an airport, because they wanted to share those stories. And so, for all of us who have this tool set, it isn't something that we necessarily have to convince somebody else of. But instead, when someone says, "How are you doing?" It's like, I was having this really rough day, and I tried this thing. And oh my gosh, did this become something that was different inside of my life. And I think that as we think about sharing these tools and getting people connected, we don't have to go from, nothing, let's go sign up with one of the Peaceful Heart Network's trainings. Like, eventually we can get there, but just being in a circumstance where we just go, huh, this is what happened to me. And now it's different inside of my body right now because. And I think that we can just make it easier when we're sharing to create that, because then once they have that lived experience, they then become, sharing their testimony in the exact same way to the people that they're encountering in their life. So, well, excellent. Well, thanks, guys, for. I know you have a training today. Thanks for finding a little time to spend with us here. Just once again, like you just know how happy I am that you all are in the world doing the work that you can do, and the fact that in some small way that we can support you as you try and do that. That's awesome. For everybody who's watching, go to peacefulheart.se, get on their mailing list. They do free trainings all of the time for people all over the world. If you're in a circumstance where you want to continue to share these tool sets, you're looking at people who have been doing it for a very long time and have learned how to do that. Spend time with them. You will be more comfortable and capable inside of your tool set, but you'll also be able to share this in a way that is useful for the people around you. So I just want to thank you guys for the amazing work that you're doing in the world. And I can't wait. The team has already started working on plans for next year and things that we want to do to make it better. Like, there's already a running document, because we can't do this without doing something like that. So I can't wait for us to keep working forward in this way.
Ah, that's so beautiful. It's not a small way, it's a huge way. So thank you so much, Jean, Elaine, and everybody in the team for doing this. Thank you all for supporting and watching and, engaging in healing wherever you are, whether it's one person or 5 or 200, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as we spread this, because even the air of the wings of a butterfly affects the world around. So, I mean, we do what we do. So I think that's very important. Thank you so much.
Awesomeness.
Yeah,
Well, I look
we keep saying, find calm and pass it on. So there's only one team. It's Team Peace, and this is the Peaceful Heart.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, love you guys. I will talk to you guys really, really soon. Awesomeness. So those are our friends, Ulf and Ganella, who continue to do absolutely amazing work. Please, please, please go to peacefulheart.se. Get on their mailing list. They do all sorts of cool stuff all over the world, all of the time. So just a couple of quick reminders. You can check out the Tapping Q&A podcast at tappingpodcast.com. As a reminder, next Sunday, a week from Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, we're doing Tapping for Pets. It is another opportunity for us to be raising some funds for the amazing work of the Peaceful Heart Network, tappingforpets.com. We have all of the replays rolling out. We're sharing with them for a day. Come back, join us next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about things that we learned from this year's event. For those of you who are watching this after the fact, on the screen right now, you will see playlist to all of the Wednesdays with Gene. We've been doing them since December. We will be back here again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. I'll talk to you guys real soon.